I'm afraid people have been brainwashed and they don't comprehend investment. If I go on the stock market today and I decide to invest in a company, I'm deciding to invest in a company because I think it's going to grow. That's just me. But some people actually make a profit when the price goes down. I'm not sophisticated enough to play those games. The same applies to commodities. Some people bet on the price of fuel going up. Some people bet on the price of fuel going down. And what do they look at? Well, they have different formulas that they use, but they use their heads. They look around and they say, okay, all those articles that Levin just read, not that they're citing me, but they keep track of these things, particularly if they invest in energy. Different types of crude, natural gas, etc. They do the same with foodstuffs. They do the same with metals. It's been going on a long, long time. As a matter of fact, it goes on with you. Some people fill up their cars because they think the price of fuel is going to go up next week, so they want to beat the increase. If you think the price is going to go down next week, then maybe you'll fill up half the tank. Works the same exact way. So the surest way to drive down the price of fuel is to take still the biggest nation on the face of the earth in terms of its economy, for now anyway, and to announce to the world that we are going to unleash our industry and invite other industries to come in to access the massive amounts of fuel that we have underground, offshore, in shale, and so forth. But we don't do that. So if I'm investing, and let's say I'm a businessman from Russia or wherever, I'm going to bet on the commodities market that the price of fuel is going to go up. If you increase supply and you increase production, you lower the price. You lower the price on the investment market, that is the commodities market, and you lower the price because you've increased supply. But markets worldwide supply. Doesn't matter. It goes into the big pot. But I cannot understand the argument that says supply and demand don't make a difference. It makes a difference to investors who invest in commodities, whether it's wheat or corn or carrots or gold or silver or what have you. It makes a difference when people invest in currency. I don't know how that works from a specific point of view, but I certainly know from a macro point of view. If you think a particular country's currency is stronger than another, you move your wealth into one currency versus another. People are not bound to stay within the borders of our country when they're making investments. Certainly foreigners aren't, and they don't. So if you're going to obstruct production, if you're going to obstruct exploration, you're going to contribute to driving up the price of fuel, both in terms of investors and commodities, and of course you're going to call them speculators, except when the price goes down, then you're going to pretend they never existed. And from a tangible point of view, if you obstruct production, you get less of what you're used to produce. Even the leftists know this. Obama says it himself. Chu, the Secretary of Energy, they say it themselves. Don't they? Yes, they do. Of course they do. I want you to hear them. And in this, I don't think you'll hear them mention speculators once. Here's Obama at the White House news conference this month, March 11th. Cut 2, go.
We can't escape the fact that we only control 2% of the world's oil, but we consume over a quarter of the world's oil.
Well, why does that matter, ladies and gentlemen, if you're of the view that only the speculators are driving up the price? Because that way they make more money, even though some of them are speculating on it going down. Well, then why do we care that we're, whatever the percentage of the population of the world that we are, And yet we consume a quarter of the world's oil. Why does that matter if the speculators are in charge? Now let's move to cut 3, Mr. Producer. Then we have Obama. He's interviewed by the San Francisco Chronicle, and he says this on January 17th, 2008, more than 2 years ago. Cut 3, go.
You know, when I was asked earlier about the issue of coal, under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
Mark, he's talking about coal there. No, he's not. He's talking about everything. Whatever the industry was. Whatever the industry was. This is the mindset of this administration. It is anti-growth. It is anti-expansion. It is anti-energy. And so they are using the law and the regulatory process and harassment from the bureaucracy to prevent those elements within our society who do this for a business from doing it. So they're not doing it as much. And the investors worldwide who invest in commodities, they see it and they hear it. Obama says he's going to have a task force investigate the speculators. Well, they might as well investigate him. Then we have Obama from that same interview. What he thinks about these energy companies. Cut 4, go.
So if somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
We're just going to bankrupt them. We're going to drive them out of business. Wait until your electricity prices start to go up, folks. Wait until you start to experience some brownouts and blackouts. If this man's reelected, that's exactly what's going to happen. Because then they will impose their will through the EPA, regardless of how you voted for members of Congress. And they will impose it on you. Now, here is Stephen Chu, the Secretary of Energy today, April 23, 2007, at Berkeley. Cut 5, go.
Let me go to the supply side of the energy problem. Now, we have lots of fossil fuel. That's really both good and bad news. We won't run out of energy, but there's enough carbon in the ground to really cook us. Coal is my worst nightmare. Carbon emission in the next 30 years is predicted in the current forecast we'll be adding 3 times the amount of carbon dioxide in the previous history of all humanity if we continue on our present course.
So coal is the enemy, oil is the enemy, gasoline is the enemy, hence electricity will be the enemy. But don't pay any attention to what they've said, what they're doing. The articles I read earlier, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Taking land out of production, taking ocean out of production, coastlines, giving more and more power over identifying land as wilderness to bureaucrats. This is all intended to stop us, to stop the growth of the economy, to stop capitalism in its tracks. It's almost like a pre-industrial age mentality to drag us back to agrarianism. And then Mr. Chu, the Secretary of Energy, was on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace. And listen to this exchange. Cut 6, go.
In 2008, you supported ramping up gas prices to coax Americans into more green energy, cars and other uses, being more fuel efficient. You said this, and let's put it on the screen. Somehow we have to figure out how to boost the price of gasoline to the levels in Europe where it is now more than $10 a gallon. In that sense, is the gas spike an opportunity for more green energy?
Well, what I'm doing since I became Secretary of Energy has been quite clear. What I've been doing is developing methods to take the pain out of high gas prices. We've been very focused in the Department of Energy on that. And in fact, the entire administration has been very focused on that. So
Stop. Take the pain. Are you people feeling less pain? Has Mr. Chu succeeded in alleviating your pain? Go ahead.
Increasing of the mileage standards is one way of doing this. A very concerted effort in electric vehicles where we think within reach, within maybe 4 or 5 years, we could be testing batteries that can allow us to go 200-300 miles on a single charge in a mass-marketed car.
Stop. How are we going to do that if they're punishing the coal companies? You see, folks, they're taking coal production out, too. This isn't just oil and gas, as you heard earlier. So moving it from fossil fuels to electricity, about half of which, or if not more, is produced through coal, that doesn't solve anything. What do electric cars solve? Well, Mark, there's no greenhouse gas, but there's all kinds of toxic waste, acid and so forth from these batteries. There's coal production involved in producing electricity, just like this ethanol scam. I know all the farm state senators love it. I get it. But it's a scam. It takes more energy to produce ethanol than it does to produce the normal sources of energy. Another scam. And that helps drive up the price of food. But anyway, go ahead, Mr. Producer.
I understand all that, and that's certainly part of your effort. But is the spike in gas prices, does that also help in making us more energy efficient?
Well, the recent spike in gasoline prices following that huge spike in 2007, 2008 is a reminder to Americans that the price of gasoline over the long haul should be expected to go up just because of supply and demand issues.
Oh, stop. Just because of supply and demand? Are you not paying attention to your president, Mr. Chu, Mr. Secretary of Energy? Mr. whatever prize you won, Nobel Prize in Physics? The president just said it's not an issue of supply, it's the speculators. All the liberals out there are saying it's not an issue of supply, it's the speculators. When in fact it's one and the same thing. If you don't drill, if you don't produce, those who invest notice, and they make investment decisions based on that. But the fact is, if you don't have enough supply, the price goes up. Mr. Chu figured it out, so you liberals need to pay attention, because it's your policies that are doing this. The weaker the dollar, the more expensive imports. Since we're importing more and more oil, that's also driving up your cost. All of this is linked. The economy is very complex, and there are all kinds of events that occur that are not on the surface, that we can't see. But what we can see, we need to take care of and make sure that when we're doing business, we're doing it properly. If the government is destroying the value of the dollar by printing paper endlessly, again, I talked about this last week, what it's doing is devaluing the currency. When you devalue the currency and you're importing more and more oil because you're not drilling domestically, you're adding hugely to the cost of fuel. So let us repeat. The president is doing all the wrong things, as you would expect a Marxist to do, because they hate capitalism, and may I add, they hate capitalists. Are you a capitalist? Well, then you're on that list. He is obstructing production. He is obstructing exploration. So, in terms of physical domestic supplies, we are not securing as much fuel domestically as we otherwise would. Those who invest in commodities all over the world, people say, well, we ought to take oil off the commodities. Well, we're not in charge of taking it off or putting it on. The whole world invests in commodities. corn, wheat, fuel, metals, and so forth. Well, these investors, they see exactly what we're doing, among other things. And so they're investing on the price of oil continuing to rise, given our own policies. And then finally, this administration and the Federal Reserve are destroying the currency, the value of the dollar. And more countries want to get off of the dollar. Well, in any event, the dollar doesn't buy what it used to buy, not only here, but overseas. So it costs more to get a barrel of oil. That's why the prices are going up. We'll be right back.